Hey guys, Whitney here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And I am joined by the famous Taylor Koo, our one of our associates on our investor relations team. You guys, I'm going to give it a minute for everybody to file into the room. I'm so excited for today's show. We're going to shake it up a little bit. But this is your first time here, you're on the Passive Investing Made Simple show. This is a show that we do live every Tuesday to help you go through the ins and outs of passive real estate so you can go into your next or first deal with confidence. And so if you haven't done so already, make sure to check out passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com. There you can get a free ebook called Passive Investing Made Simple. And you can also get access to my calendar if we haven't had the pleasure of speaking, and you can see our open deals. All right, guys, we're going to kick off today's show. I am, again, so thankful to be joined here with Taylor today, our guru on our investor relations team. And
Stop. What do you want from me? You said famous, and then you called me a guru. I feel honored to be here. Thank you so much, Whitney.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always fun, and we have always such a great time every time you're on the show. But we're going to turn the tables because I'm the guest today on today's show.
Yeah. Yes, you are the guest. The cover photo is a little bit misleading because it looks like you were going to be interviewing me, but we are actually going to be switching the questions onto you because Whitney, you have, the content that you've been providing for our masterclasses has been incredible. There's been so much knowledge and golden nuggets that have been passed through on all of these masterclasses, but we've never really gotten to actually talk with you and get more personal and talk about your actual investment journey and what that looks like and almost like how that transitioned from where you started to where you are now. And so I guess with the first question and just to kickstart the conversation, I would love to know some of the main obstacles that you ran through with starting from single family over into multifamily, and just what did that look like?
Oh my gosh, how many?
How many?
Well, so just to kind of like let everybody know, some people might be joining for the first time. So I actually started real estate investing in 2002, and I was working in public health. I was actually working for the CDC on a bioterrorism grant. You name it. I was training doctors and nurses how to identify biological, chemical, and radiological events post 9/11. So this is important because post 9/11, I'm traveling 80 hours a week. I'm teaching people how to identify smallpox, give vaccinations, the whole 9 yards. I loved it. It was my dream job. But I also bought a house with a significant other, and that relationship fell apart. Now, and so it's important to my journey because I kind of fell into real estate that way because I had this house. I'm like, oh snap, what do I do? It needs a rehab. So I stuffed it full of roommates, completed the rehab, and then I'm like, thank goodness I'm going to sell it and get out from underneath it. When I got that check at the closing table, I'm like, oh, wait a second. I just made more in 11 months than I did in my day job. How many more times can I do this? Because that was actually kind of fun. I had also been living rent-free the whole entire time because my roommates had been covering the bill. Now, so when we talk about obstacles, that's my foray into real estate. So I started off my first few years doing this live-in flipping and house hacking. And then eventually, but I couldn't figure out how people retired off the money. I was like, it's feast or famine. I'm getting a big check or I'm not. And I'm good at budgeting my money, but somebody gets a $70,000 check in their bank account, and they say you have to live off of it for 2 years. I'm kind of like, that's not that much money. What am I going to do? So we needed to figure out a way. By this time I'm married, and we needed to figure out a way how to have passive income coming in on a monthly basis. Now, I know I haven't answered your question, Taylor, but I think the backstory is really important because somebody said, why don't you keep one of those rentals? And I'm like, keep it and do what? And they're like, we'll put a tenant in there so they paid your bill. Remember when you had your roommates? And I'm like, oh, smack yourself in the middle of the forehead. I'm like, okay, I need to do that. So, and then we built up our portfolio of rentals. We hit our next level of ceiling of achievement, where we needed to learn how to scale ourselves. How are we going to do that? So the obstacles along the way are, I think, for me, are largely tied to many things, like lack of knowledge, mindset, sometimes belief in myself. Who did I need to become in order to do that? What skills was I missing? My networks, right? But the thing is, I have three questions that that I've learned to ask myself through various mentoring and coaching relationships. And my framework is like every time I'm butting up against a ceiling of achievement or an obstacle, I recenter myself on what do I want? Why do I want it? And who do I have to become to get it? And when I think about who do I have to become to get it, it's what mindset do I have now, but need to get to my next, get through this obstacle, get to my next ceiling or next level of achievement. What skills do I have now, but what do I need going forward? Okay. Now, I have an extra question I ask there. Do I need to have a skill or can I hire the skill? Okay. And then what networks do I need in order to move forward? So most recently, I've been focused on a book. You asked me 6 months ago, I had no clue. I'm like, isn't just a book you like pull out a G-Doc and you start writing out some words? No, nothing of the like. But I was like, okay, what do I want? Why do I want this? And what do I need to achieve it? What's my mindset got to be like? What skills do I need? Do I need to have them? Can I bring them into my world? What networks do I need to have in order to make this all happen? So I'll just kind of like frame that, and then we can dive down any rabbit hole that you got for me.
Yeah, yeah, because even diving deeper through that, and as you're starting to expand your network, I mean, expanding your network, I mean, it isn't all sunshine and daisies either. To then be becoming, I guess, where you are today. But like because when you started, did you start as a passive investor in syndications beforehand, or did you strictly go towards yeah, actually, where did the crossover eventually start from? From those rentals.
Yeah, so my path was the live in flipping to house hacking.
Right.
We were living off of one income, less than one income. So we're stuffing money away in our 401ks and TSPs like mad. And then and that's important because when we got into buying our rentals, and I rated I'm not saying do this, guys. This is not do what I do or do what I did, but I actually decided to break up with the IRS and got back some of that money. Started building out my real estate empire, right? But so we hit that level of achievement where, we got the 30 rentals. I'm like, I think, yeah, we had the 30 rentals, our baby girl is just a few, maybe 3 or 4 years old. I'm taking care of my grandparents. I'm actually their guardian. And I'm taking care of my mom too. So this is my mom's parents and then my mom, and all from a distance. So I'm traveling a lot. I'm traveling for work. I'm traveling to take care of them. I'm trying to be the best wife and mother too. And I have these 30 rentals. I'm not managing them. I have property management, but it was taking a lot of time to manage the manager. Anybody who's had that many rentals, they know it's leveraged, but it's not, you don't have time freedom.
Right.
And so anyways, I had still some funds left in my IRA, and I looked at that and I'm like, I'm going to invest those into a passive real estate deal because I can't bear trying to figure out now how to get that invested into yet another single family property. I'm going to put it in somebody else's deal. I'm just going to roll the dice, see what happens here. Now, it wasn't like that. I actually learned how to vet the operators, markets, and the deals, everything that I teach here. But I was like, set it and forget it. Like, I'll wake up 5 years from now. Hopefully the money's doubled at least. But that's important here because I hit this, near exhaustion, burning the candle at both ends 5 times in the middle. And I go to my husband, I was like, we have these 30 single family rentals. I really feel like we have enough cash flow coming in to where I can start working part-time spending more time at home with my family, with our daughter. And he was fully in support of that. But he said one thing. He goes, I want that too. And I was like, that's awesome. He is coming to the dark side of real estate. And then I cried because we hadn't built that dream out with both of us in mind. And I was like, so I now have to scale to 80 single family rentals to get him out of his job. I was like, no way is that happening. I was like, that's it. We're not doing it. I mean, I told him, I'm like, no, you can't quit. So I was like, we have to figure out how to do this a different way. We have to get more deals with one transaction. And he was like, okay, how do we do that? I'm like, I don't know. Multifamily building? Like, he was like, okay, how do we buy a multifamily building? I'm like, I don't know. I don't have a realtor. So
Okay.
I was like, so we figured out, like, we had 3 different options we saw. Do we do this ourselves? Do we do it with partners? Or do we do it passively? Now, mind you, I had invested in those 2 deals in my IRA. And I'm like, what is the best way for me to start learning about this? I'm like, well, I invest in these deals. I get monthly reports from them. I have all of their information and underwriting. I'm like, I'm going to start using that as a model. And then when I'm creating my models here and my decks and, re-engineering all my contacts and stuff like that, I'm like, wait a second. This is pretty good. This money's coming in like clockwork on a monthly or quarterly basis, and I'm not having to do any of the work for it. Like, is it really that much better for me to get entirely involved here? And that boiled down to, I had to understand, what do I want and why do I want it, right? Because part of me wanted to continue to be active in real estate. The other part of me wanted to eventually, at some point in time, be able to walk away and have somebody manage everything else. And I was like, okay, I'm going to begin with the end in mind. I'm going to build the portfolio both ways. I'm going to invest in some of these actively and get into shorter relationships, maybe 5 or 10 year relationships, and then see how this goes. And then I'm going to build another half of our portfolio that was completely passive. That was kind of the fallback. I'm going to find the best operators. I'm going to invest with the best operators and the best markets and the best deal. And I'm going to leave that alone. And that is essentially my retirement. If I decide to pull the plug on the active piece, I've already got this over here that's being built, and I'm continuing methodically to take chips off the table and put into. So I had that flexibility to do whatever I wanted.
Now, when I feel like the transition going to single family, multifamily, it seems like it's a pretty easy, also tangible transition just to understand. But then where did the different asset classes come into play? Was that after a few years of just going strictly just investing into multifamily? And then that's when you started to diversify across these different asset classes?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because I don't think we really talk about this enough. And I think it's one of the benefits of investing passively. I had to choose, right? Like the old adage is, he who chases 2 rabbits catches none. I knew I had to choose one thing first. And so, because when we're my husband and I are trying to decide what asset to go into, do I figure out multifamily? Do I figure out self-storage or something else? All things were on the table. And I'm like, I got to focus on one area first. We understood that we should eventually start diversifying our portfolio to be safe. But I was like, if I take my eye off the ball in multifamily, this ship sinks, because I can't do it all. Right.
Right.
Unless I bring in partners, right? Unless I scale the business myself and bring on a team and, build out the big syndication group, right? That I didn't know if I wanted that. And so I was like, but I know I need the diversification. So we started really, I would say probably about a year after passively investing, after we kind of proved out the model to ourselves that this, yes, does work in multifamily. It really, then we started vetting out other self-storage operators and other business operators as well, and started, investing there. Now I I like watching operators for like 6 to 12 months before I invest with them.
Hmm.
So I like dating for a while.
No, but I feel like that's there's a lot of value into just dating slowly. It's almost like you're just becoming friends first because you're actually starting to understand a lot more about the operator then. But then I can also imagine that too, just being a little bit more daunting just from um daunting, just starting out brand new and then going to a completely different asset class, even though there are some parallels to trying to understand the business plan and how there are different levers to be pulled. There is still that gap of just trying to understand it as a whole, and then eventually to be able to trust them for, 5-7 years or however long these the hold periods are projected, right? And so, I'm curious then, if you were to go back and give yourself advice, starting from when you just invested into multifamily and also to the other commercial real estate asset classes, what advice would you give yourself starting over? And would you have people do the same exact thing as you did?
Well, I mean, if I were starting over from the very beginning, I would have um, bought probably a multifamily unit or a duplex
Hmm.
and house hack that way. So, and we can talk about why that is, but I really, I don't have many qualms on how I got started. Because in hindsight, it was beautiful. Like going through it, it really sucked. As far as like getting into the multifamily space, I probably would have, I didn't know what I didn't know, right? Because, here I thought what I wanted was to be the syndicator, right?
Mhm.
Like the active on the general partnership side. And I trust me, I enjoy it. I do. And, I stepped into that role for, several years. Um, but I think I would have probably sat with it a little longer and really understood my end why, which is I wanted freedom and control of my time. And that's a little bit hard when you're that active syndicator, unless you're going to scale your company, pretty sizably to be able to, hand those reins off to like a competent team. And I knew that I was pretty certain that I didn't want to do. But I guess I would have just sat with those questions a little bit longer to really fully understand.
Mhm.
But I think, for me, like on that journey, because I methodically and repeatedly asked those questions, as soon as had gathered enough information to go, this really isn't where I want to spend my time, especially right now where I'm at in my life. I joke around, you guys hear me joke around that my daughter's 10 and she still likes me. And I'm going to milk that for all it's worth, to be fully present at home. And I have other things that I do on the side, like small, like little businesses that I really enjoy running. Once at least I had a methodology in place to, as soon as I realized that, and I had the methodology and the capability, the financial capability to kind of like push pause and be like, okay, I'm going to not take on this large syndication role right now, maybe at a later time, but what do I really love doing? And let's go do that.
Mm.
And that's where I'm at today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what we're working for. And it's inspiring just to hear you get to this point. But I'm also curious too in getting a little bit more granular on the deal side then, because the deals back then, when you were looking at deals and trying to align your goals with your end goal, they look different than some of the deals that are being presented now. And when I say different, I mean they can look very, very, very different, especially during this economic environment in this market cycle. And so what are some of the major differences that you've seen comparing deals from now to back then?
Yeah. So, I mean, differences, cap rates weren't as compressed, cash flow wasn't as compressed on, some of the deal. I mean, specifically, we're talking multifamily and self-storage.
Right.
Um, So operators could offer a larger preferred return. You might encounter some operators that offered larger splits, like an 80-20 split, like GP split on the deal. But I have an issue with that, right? Because the space was so new. Remember, this space really started growing in 2015, right? After, some regulatory changes in 2012. So it wasn't these larger syndicators were just getting started in 2015. And so they needed people to invest with them. And, one of the ways to attract, investors to a new business is to give away more to the limited partner or make that split larger to the limited partner. But as a business matures, the general partner doesn't, have to give that away. And I don't think a lot of investors, and I didn't really truly appreciate this, really orient to the fact that the general partner doesn't get paid that much. I mean, I know everybody's like, oh, they get their acquisition fee and their asset management fee. Those are sizable checks. Okay.
Yeah.
They've looked about it. But that covers all the expenses, but they generally don't get paid anything until the deal exits. They are the last to get paid. And most operators, they're kind of working, I hate to say this, they're working for the tip at the end, right? You get to go to the restaurant as the limited partner, you get to take part in the whole meal and have the whole course. And then the general partner is like, thank you very much. Hopefully you really enjoyed the meal. And now I get the tip, right? And it's much larger than a tip, but I've heard it put that way. I think having worked in the space, I really have seen all the work and all the care and all the love with high quality operators and what they do for their investors on the back end that I think sometimes not as appreciated, or maybe gets missed a little bit. So for me, I started orienting around, I was like, when that split model started changing from 80-20 to 70-30, generally in the multifamily space, I was like, you know what? I have seen everything that they have to do to find a deal, underwrite the deal, get that puppy close and across the finish line, manage that deal, then turn around and handle the investors, and then exit that deal. I'm kind of for me to have my time back and be left alone, I'm okay with the 30%.
Right.
That's just me. So, but I think I have a unique perspective because I've been in the space. I've seen it, right?
And and now piggybacking off of that, because I mean, you have a very unique experience in actually seeing the active side and what actually goes on within the general partnership. If a passive investor is looking to do more, but doesn't want to necessarily go onto the GP side to gain all of that knowledge, what should they do? Because the challenge is, like you mentioned, the space started to become very popular to a point where a lot of the deals are starting to look the same, offering the same preferred return, offering the same equity split in similar markets, doing the same business plan. And so how do you, this I guess is a long-winded question, but where do those differentiations start to happen? And what were some of the big pluses that you've seen that other passive investors can also look for on the GP side?
Yeah. So, we talk about this a lot when we go do our boot camps on how to vet operators, markets, and deals. But, I think that know, love, and trust triangle that we talk quite exhaustively about here. Any operator can put together a fancy looking deck. Any operator can put together, reasonable numbers or good looking numbers on a spreadsheet. But I think it boils down to the competence of the team to accurately predict what they feel will happen in the business plan and execute on that. But that's kind of in hindsight. You don't know that until you exit the deal, right? So what do you need to have transparency of in between? And that is, I think, the communication. So, and track record, what track record does that operator bring in the space? What are they known for? And then also the communication, like how well are they communicating? Are they honest? Are they transparent? And I always, tell people to, if you get on the phone with somebody, think with your gut too, right? Like our gut is kind of our first brain. It's our first introduction into the outside world. Like whenever you eat food, it doesn't go straight to your brain, it goes to your gut. And then like your gut can give information back to the brain, right? Like what is your gut feeling, telling you whenever you talk to an operator on their phone? So, I think those are things that really to kind of like, take home. But, what is their expertise? What is their knowledge about the market? Who do they have on their team? If you're working with an operator that's either new to the space or new to a new vertical in the market, maybe they're bringing on self-storage or something like that. Like who on their team has the expert knowledge? What is their track record? Talk to what are their referrals saying? Like anybody can hand out a referral, a positive referral, but are you participating in investor groups? And what is the general sentiment in the investor group?
Right. And so no, that's really fascinating, because and something that I was also thinking of too is as we are talking about this whole journey and even vetting deals is, I mean, it's not as transactional as we see it. I mean, even though they can list off the different checklists, at the end of the day, it also, you need to pass the gut check too, and to see if you really do trust this person. But bringing this idea of trust back into a topic that was, well, topic more so name slash person that is special in your life that was mentioned a little bit earlier on, something that isn't brought up as much is working with a spouse to be able to invest in deals like this. And so you mentioned that it was pretty seamless, but I am curious to dive into it a little bit more of what did that look like? Because even though yours is seamless,
Which
others.
Which part did I say was seamless about investing?
Okay, well, well, maybe not.
Let's be real here.
Well, maybe you gotta backtrack the recording on this and listen back then. But I mean, spouses and family are a big part of the investment journey, especially if you are diving into something completely new. And so, what were some of the fears and then also obstacles that you had to work with your spouse to move forward then?
My spouse, so Colin, my spouse, my husband, he is
Shout out to Colin.
What was that?
I was just saying, shout out to Colin.
Shout out to Colin. He's always been my number one cheerleader. One of the reasons why I married him is he wasn't intimidated by me, which is, and I don't find myself intimidating at all. But he just, he rolls. He's extremely self-confident, and I really, really fell in love with that. But yeah, like when I got into, real estate and, especially remember, I like rated my 401k, not his, my 401k to start investing in deals. And he was like, okay, you go do you, because I support you. I'm like, who does that? Like, but for me, naturally, I generally come to the table to plan and, education. He knew I wasn't going to take huge risks with that. I wasn't going to bet the house, all the money on one deal. Like he knew I had a methodical plan. I'm like, here, we're going to invest in 15 to 20 assets. It turned out to be 30, almost 40, so, he was really in support of that. I think where it got, I kind of laughed because we needed a bookkeeper at one point in time, and I was following Tom Wheelwright's advice is hire family members. Well, my daughter's 3 or 4 at the time. She's not going to do the bookkeeping. I'm like, my husband loves mountain biking, and I was like, hey, you want extra change to go mountain biking and buy all your gear, do the bookkeeping, I'll pay you from the business. That was the worst idea.
Okay.
Ever.
Okay.
Worst idea ever, on so many levels. And so that was it was a really hard conversation. I was like, okay, I have to be your boss today, but I gotta let you go. So fired him as the bookkeeper. And then later on that day, I was like, he went to work, came back, and he was like, I was like, how was work? And he was like, well, my boss today was kind of a jerk, but I'm glad to be home. I had to laugh at that. But
In
it hasn't always been as smooth.
sunshine and daisies.
No, but
Gotcha.
I think what makes it really easier for us is that we have a common set of values, or I would say overlapping set of values. I think it's kind of boring if you share everything in common,
Right.
but we have an overlapping core set of values, and then we consistently sit down, on a regular basis, and to really fully understand, what are we working towards? What do we want? Why do we want it? And like, who do we have to become in order to get it? And sometimes the work falls on him, sometimes it falls on me, sometimes it falls on both of us. So
Now, bringing in the third part of the family then, and as some of the other attendees might also have kids as well, how are you also including the kids to also learn about this investment journey? I mean, even though, kids are very, they could be young, right? I wouldn't expect a 3-year-old to know what a preferred return is or actually understand just the concept of passive investing. But family does take a huge part in the investment journey, and they are part of the sacrifice. And I feel like, especially as we are starting to get older in the younger generation, it is going to be a lot more difficult to invest in certain assets like this, unless there's that education piece. And so I'm curious to know, what are some of the ways that you have been implementing the little one into your investment journey and some of those decisions?
yeah, so I'll kind of back up, why I started doing that is my grandfather passed away in 2016. This was on my dad's side. And so I have a book coming out in January where I tell the story about the difference between my two grandfathers, my mom's father and my dad's father. They almost identical lives until it comes down to how they handled their estates when they decided they wanted to retire. One kept his land, rented some of it out, rented out the house, earned oil royalties, and kept his cattle and really tried to create all these passive streams of income. The other one sold everything and decided he was going to buy an RV and travel. Now, they had two extremely different lifestyles during retirement, and their ending years starkly different. Okay, my dad's father, who decided to hold on to all of his assets as much as possible and create these multiple streams of income, he did pretty well for himself. Here's the thing. We had no idea how he did it. No clue. He didn't teach either one of his two sons. So, nor did he teach his 3 grandkids. And he died and, actually and went to the grave. Until 7 days ago or 9 days ago, I thought went to the grave and wrote none of this down. I was like, hey, there's success leaves clues, right? I'm trying to pick up and like how he did this, but I'm like, wouldn't it have been really cool if he had like taught his 2 sons who taught us like how he did all this, and we could stand on the shoulder of giants. Now, 9 days ago, I learned from my cousin that he wrote his memoirs in 1999, and they are like buried
in the archives.
In the archives and
bowels.
filed paperwork. And he was like, oh yeah, I think he wrote it down in 1999. But my cousin was like, I just filed that away and I didn't look at it. I'm like, my mind's blown. I'm like, dig that up and give it to me.
Right.
But anyway, so, even if those were written in 1999, they haven't seen a light of day. It's 2023. That's 24 years that we could have been putting that knowledge into action. So to answer your question is, what am I doing with Avery? One, I'm like, I've captured all of this, my journey, a large part here on passiveinvesting.com, with the Passive Investing Made Simple show, with the boot camps that I do. I also on my personal website, ashwealth.com, a lot of it's captured there. I'm writing this book with bigger pockets. A ton of that information will be captured there. One of it is just getting it down and getting it out to where it can be accessed and not buried away. 2, so that's fine. Financial literacy, that's only one piece of the puzzle. Like, is the knowledge there? Is it written down? Has it been passed on? Now I got to get people to act on it, right? That's financial capability. And so that gets down to, what am I doing with my kid, right? So you kind of made a joke, like she doesn't know what a preferred return is at age 3 or 4. She gets it. She gets the concept. We started playing cash flow for kids with her when she was about 3 and a half. And it's really simple. It's income, expenses. Like, they're learning how to add and subtract, like, preschool. That's all you got to do in the game. And we help her. And so I was like, if she can get one concept down when we play this game of what an asset and a liability is, I have won. I have never had to have a conversation with her in the middle of a Target or anything like that, or what you choose your store, where she was like, Mom, can I have like $25 to go buy a Barbie? I have never had that conversation with her before.
Whoa.
I know. I mean, have I ruined her as a child? No, because grandma showers her with presents. So she's definitely enjoyed. We're good. But we'll have the conversation. It's like, is it an asset or a liability? So she can consciously make a choice on how she spends her money. Now she's almost 11. She regularly earns, we don't do an allowance. She has a sheet in the house. It's called a creating value sheet. Some of it is executive ordering type stuff, that her basic chores that she gets done. But if she misses the chore, she doesn't, in a block of chores, she doesn't get paid for the whole block, right? Like, this is a complete repercussion for her not following through. But she also has a list of things that she knows she can get paid extra for if she helps us in the business. Like, we rent one of our properties as an Airbnb, and she was helping me with the property, get it set up the other day. And she picked up the cleaner and the rag and went and washed all the windows. And then she came back and handed me a bill. I did not ask her to do that. And she was like, I washed all 11 windows. I was like, awesome. Like, those are the things, like, she is beginning to understand where the true value is being created, right? It's not just that she, like, cleans up after herself and does her small chores around the house, but she was just like, if I want to get paid, and she went and bought herself like some new clothes. She was like, I need to figure out what is going to produce the most value. I'm going to go do that. And that's a mindset that we've been working on with her. So
and that's what's really fascinating, especially about working with this company, is just seeing how different kids are being intertwined. And so I was hosting an investor dinner over in Orlando, and Dan's kid, Caleb, came. And so being able to see what the parents are doing and getting them involved. And I think Caleb's even invested in one of the car wash deals too, just to actually get that experience, but then go to the car wash and see what's actually going on. They're able to pick that up and start to understand the value of investing, and then also just the value of also just working towards that as well. So
she's invested in her camper van business, but she also knows what she needs to do in the business. She sees our short-term and mid-term rental in the mountains that we have. And she's also passively invested in 2 deals alongside of me. Not with passiveinvesting.com, but with another group that, that we invested several years ago in Colorado Springs. And I specifically did that because when we drive through Colorado Springs, I wanted her to see the buildings, like tangibly see them. And so, yeah, she's passively invested, and, she gets her distribution, and, anyways, the way we've got it set up, I wrote her a note, and she gets her distribution, and, I make her check her bank account, like, did she get it? Like, so.
Little personal note in the lunchbox too, once the distribution comes out as well. And then a nice little personal touch. No, I love that. I love to hear that. And so, because I do want to save some time for Q&A afterwards, for some of the attendees that have been here, but anything else that you'd like to, at least the final words before we move over to the Q&A?
No, I'll let you drive the boat here.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you everyone for coming to the passiveinvesting.com Made Simple podcast show, and we'll see you next time.